Call the ball. Well, I actually have it's 3:01. I'm sorry. I was looking at that. Shouldn't get done. Thank you. All right.
I forgot that. That's good.
This is the workshop.
Yeah.
Don't know how we titled it.
So title.
So, it just says workshop. All the board members are present. Our mayor's here, our general manager. I think our council is to join us virtually.
Not yet.
Virtually, okay. And
Well, I think you got one in there.
You got some attendees too.
we have the Sussex County Engineer Hans Medler, who's been a very good friend to the Lewes BPW and the city of Lewes. Thank you, Hans. Mike is there.
Hey, press members of the board, Mike Hoffman is here. I'm the voice in the sky, so I will observe, but if you have questions, I can unmute myself.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah. So I think you're gonna head this off.
Yeah, so really there's two things that we're going to sit here and talk about today. The first one is the discussion of mutual aid. So the way that I view this is that, you know, we have mutual aid abilities through DMEC, through DWARN, but really on wastewater, when we have an issue down at our wastewater treatment plant, the first call is usually to Hans anyway, because we have to change up or dial back the flow or shut off the flow. So the idea that I had was through mitigating risk of having an agreement with Hans, where we can set up ways to mitigate risk through having allotted equipment resources, pumps, vac trucks, pipe, staff that would be able to help in an emergency situation. Again, I just look at it as like a football team. You need a depth chart. And then the ability to utilize the county's T&M contract. Mike may slap me for that one, but in emergency situations, being able to utilize that, it's an asset. Also looking at like consulting for upgrades, experiences that they have had at pump stations, issues for like clogging, wet wipes, and then also looking at ways that we could mitigate risk specifically at our regional pump stations. Similar to what had happened at Pump Station 4, we're trying to come up with ideas like bidirectional flow. It's not an easy thing to do, but it's something that if we do lose a force main, we have the ability to flip a switch and in all intents and purposes and send flow back to the county. So those were really the discussion topics that I had put in there and the idea that I had. And I think Hans's idea was this would be a good time for everybody to sit down and kind of discuss what we're looking for, what Hans can offer, and kind of go from there. So my thought was, Hans, did I pretty much sum it up in a good way?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would add, you want to talk about the 3 existing agreements so everybody understands what we have and what we don't have.
Yes. So what we have currently is we have an agreement with Sussex County in which we utilize for Oyster Cove, but we also have areas that are coming to fruition. For example, the Orchard is another area that we're looking at. I believe it's 20.
It's probably about 30 total because it's off both streets.
Yes. So about 30. We have the extension of Ritter Lane, which the
That's
county,
about 20.
yeah, 20 there, which the county stops right at the railroad track with a gravity system. And then we also have wind of a couple parcels that are on Gill's Neck that are actually in the city limits, but have requested for a gravity system to the county through Schofield. So there's a lot of moving parts here and a lot of different various kind of projects that are coming to fruition. And we're at kind of a point where the board has to decide, are we pursuing all these projects or does it make sense for adjusting, CPCN and so forth? Because with these, right, we provide water, sewer, electric, and so forth. With several of these projects, we would only be the sewer provider. And right now our rates are based off water consumption. With Tidewater being the water provider, that kind of creates a new dilemma in terms of creating a rate that covers costs and also is not tied to consumption, considering that we wouldn't know what the consumption would be. and they bill on a quarterly, which makes it even harder because you'd have to back bill essentially. So
Define which properties on Gills Neck that are in the city that would be asking to connect to Schofield.
yeah, let me.
We actually, yeah, we have an agreed upon boundary. We have a boundary which was agreed upon long before Austin and Hans, and that's the service boundary. And we have some,
I'm fine with River Lane and the other parcels on Old Orchard Road. I understand where those are. I'm fine with that. But this is the first time I'm hearing about Gills Neck.
Okay, it just came up.
Okay.
can we start on the low hanging fruit and move on away?
Okay, let's do that. Good idea.
That's not the lowest hanging fruit. Yeah, so we have agreements for wastewater services between the county and Lewes Board of Public Works. Been amended a few times. We have a biosolids handling agreement with the board, which is working well. We're finally up and running, bringing the biosolid levels down. And we have one application construction agreement, which what Austin was referring to on a mutual aid would have to be expanded to a multiple location agreement. That was a one and done agreement versus a multiple location as need arises basis. So we have the vehicle. So, and Mike was very instrumental on the legal side because we're using a third party in addition to our own forces, which creates a lot of liability issues, but we do have a template. So it's just a matter of how do we expand on that template.
The
So
third party being Georgia Lynch.
the third party being our general labor and equipment contractor, which does not necessarily have to be
Okay.
G&L because we have two right now.
All right.
But so the lowest one is we do have a aid agreement with the town of Bridgeville, which we have exercised numerous times, and also one with Seaford, where they can call on our services. So let's just say, what do we have? We have 4 vac trucks, we have 3 pumpers, we have 3 tractor trailers, tankers, we have 3, I want to say at least 2 septic trucks, maybe 3. So I think I have more trucks than I have CDL drivers. So
How convenient.
at least on an on-call basis. But, so we do have a lot of equipment. Some of it is actually stationed in Dewey, some of it is stationed in Wolf Neck, and some of it is stationed in Inland Bays. So these are the 3 which could come relatively short order. We do have a series of diesel pumps. They're stationed in South Coastal. So they would probably take a little bit longer to get here. But we did have one on standby because we were about to bring it up until Austin told us, stand down. So the mutual aid would spell out equipment's available, staff's available. And it says that we get reimbursed and that's a by-way basis on what's called benefit rates. So whatever is our union contract, whatever that says, we would have to pay that and you would reimburse us for that. Normally we go with just a flat rate of $100 for equipment, for large equipment pieces. We have to be very careful in phrasing this, that it is on a need case-by-case basis because there is the perception that we are trying to undercut private business. And since we're on a union contract, that's not the intent. And that's not the intent you have. This isn't the intent. If you need it on July 4th at 4 o'clock in the morning, you need to be there. That's sort of what puts that box around the mutual aid.
And we don't have a lot to offer in equipment and so forth, but does it go the other way too?
That makes it the easiest because then I could just, we probably have 10 times as much equipment and staff as you.
Yes.
But that's
And personnel,
irrelevant.
yeah.
I mean, so did Bridgeville. They had 3 guys and 1 piece of equipment. Seaford has no rack truck, no tanker, no pumper. So, we understand this is not the The one lane's more travel than the other.
So my understanding is that all of your workers are union. Does that present any problem with our staff?
Like, we just have to honor our contract. That the union team loves to have more call-outs.
No, I was on your side. I'm just wondering, mixing union and non-union labor is usually, okay.
So that's the mutual aid component. And that's the labor and equipment component, and possibly the general labor and equipment contractor. So we do have vehicles Mike can use, I can use, Charleston can use, to bring something forward which will strictly address that issue, which
Emergency.
The emergency use, yeah.
July 4th, 2 o'clock in the morning. You're either, calling for staff that's not close, that's 2-3 hours away, or you call Hans and he brings his equipment, which we've done it how many times? I mean, we had the tanker down here. They brought 2 bypass pumps that day.
we
And
had our mobile press.
and we had the mobile press. So, I mean, we've utilized it to its degree now. This is mainly formalizing it. And also, in my opinion, it's the right thing to do to compensate Hans for everything he's done for us.
Question, if it were necessary, are any of your staff licensed operator? If there was something at the plant that needed to be done and required a certified licensed person?
We have plus or minus 1 licensed operator on the union team and 4 licensed operators on the management team.
Look, I want to thank, my name is Earl Webb, we've met in person. I want to thank you for what you've already done. I mean, what you guys did for us, I think was Herculean, and it is greatly appreciated by myself, and I'm sure everyone here and the city of Lewes. So thanks for everything you guys did in the last issue that we had. Formalizing this agreement makes complete sense. I mean, you're already helping us, and we need to formalize it and make sure that there's a quid pro quo in what you're doing for us, and it is greatly appreciated.
And when we brought the mobile press, I completely forgot about that, but it really helped greatly reduce the biosolids at a somewhat critical point. I wasn't going to say.
No, it was there.
It was definitely, it was timely. How about that?
Yes.
So that was a good thing, and that would have to be in that mix because it's been in Rehoboth, it's been in operation in South Coastal, we had it in Lewes, so we bought it for that purpose. That's a $500,000 piece of equipment, which comes on a tractor trailer.
And it's been-
Absolutely, I know, it's for sure, it's a good idea.
So I'm asking Mike or us or you or all of us, what's the process to come together and formalize something?
Put a draft agreement together.
I think this meeting was basically putting everybody's minds, like, I had my vision of what I want in there, but does the board have anything else that they would like to see in there that kind of overlaps with,
I like
what
that
I
operator
mentioned?
comment a lot.
Well,
That's
I
a
have a
possibility.
question on Richard's comment on the operator. Could
Capabilities, man.
a county operator come in and operate our plant without DENREC approval?
I don't know that.
I don't know the answer, but it's called, each facility has a direct responsible charge. That is
I.e. Richard Plack.
this is a DNREC notification. It's not an approved, you have the ability to change that DRC at any time, but there is a person on record to be the responsible charge. So that person is in charge of the facility, and anybody who steps in would have to operate under the DRC, unless you, as the owners, replace the DRC.
Yeah, I think that's the question you'd have to ask, is since you have your operator who's a contractor with you, would they want to allow somebody from the county to come in and take over, operations? But
I don't think we'd want to do that necessarily.
No.
Somebody can come in and work under the Infomark's guy. That's how we'd work it.
It's about having a second operator.
Yeah.
Yeah, not,
It would be used, wouldn't it be used if there's an emergency need for it? You're not.
Right.
Yeah.
If your DRC is incapacitated for a significant
Mhm,
amount of time, that would be
Yeah.
an authorization. If you have, because the facility has staffing needs just like our facility does, then you have to have an operator on site
Mhm.
properly licensed.
Right.
So these are things, like, for example, when I was running the Kent County facility, which is a 24/7 minimum staffed facility with biosolid staffing, I needed 3 people on shift. And if people were not able to come in and called out, and the on-call team was not sufficient, it was a mandatory, you have to stay. You cannot leave the site. So
Yeah.
it creates some problems.
Now, the typical person to arrive, if we had that situation occurred, would that be the union guy or the 3 administrative guys? Or would you?
My first line of defense would be if it's a single shift to be covered, I would ask for a manager to step in and come over. If it's a week, I would ask for a licensed operator to be picked and assigned to. Like we ran the Bridgeville plan with our staff under their permit for well over a year. And the reason for that was because they felt they did not want to hire another licensed operator. After their operator left, they had 2, but you needed 2 people to cover the plant because, you need to work more than 40 hours in the facility. So we stepped in with 1 licensed operator and additional licensed operators to fill all the remaining shifts. So I want to say that went on for 18 months.
How hard is it to get a licensed operator in this area?
It's,
Without stealing one of yours, by the way, I'm not suggesting that.
strangely enough, when Rehoboth got in the same situation, Rehoboth asked for licensed operator assistance under their agreement. We sent one, and they made him an offer he couldn't refuse. So that was not exactly, that was one of my best guys.
That should be written into the contract that that can't happen.
Of course it can happen.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, like let's not kid ourselves, of course it can happen. But the guy was one of my best guys. And he actually called me and said, hey.
no, we can actually write that into the mutual aid that,
Yes.
You can't make an offer to someone from
Unless we
the
pay you
county
$10 million.
for 6 months or, a year.
I'm not worried about it.
Yeah.
How hard is it to get an operator?
The higher you get on the license class, the more difficult it gets. So
License 4, hardest.
license 4 being the highest license being.
Are we 4?
Yeah, that's what Richard is.
And we have, the majority of our operators are licensed 4 operators because we have 3 of our facilities are licensed 4 plants. So we have to have them. But you can get a license, an unlicensed person out of Deltec or a licensed operator level 1 relatively easily because it's a nice career path. People seem to tend to gravitate there. We find it more difficult to get laboratory technicians because now we're competing with a very, like you get paid twice as much if you work for EnviroCorp than if you work for Sussex County lab, and it requires the same certifications.
How long does it take a level 1 to become a level 4?
With the mandatory years of licensing as DRC, it is a 6-year process.
From 1 to 4.
Yes.
Do we need and have 2 licensed operators with the number 4 license? Is that a requirement 2 as opposed to 1.5 or?
Well, you have to have 1.
You have to have
1.
1, but then you have like the capacity of the plant. Like there's a history, for example, our plant, our history is normally 4 operators at the plant. They don't have to be level 4 operators, but they're operators. So we'll have
And each has to have at least a license or
license
level 1.
one. Yeah, level 1.
Okay.
The
We
license,
get one level 4 though, right?
Correct.
have to-
That's
you have to have a level 4 DRC.
Yeah.
And if you have lesser licensed people working at the facility, the level 4 DRC, direct responsible charge, has to be available for communication and consultation by phone at all times. So it's pretty tricky. So it's nice to have 2, because otherwise the person who is the only level 4 essentially can never be not on call.
So, and it's just a curiosity question. What would be the range of compensation for someone with that level of license, level 4? Just ballpark.
Highest level operator we had who just retired after, let's say, 25 years of service was in the high almost $70,000.
Come back to work.
She, the person is a she.
Is that Heather?
No, it was,
She's been-
she had a license.
Yeah.
But she did not operate anymore. I think it may have actually expired because of the continued ed requirements. But to actually, if you were to say tomorrow, you wanted to do your own in-house operations to get the team of 4 together. Yeah, plan for a few months recruitment, because you can't, I would be surprised if you could have them here in 4 weeks.
I could live with that.
So
It's hard to imagine getting anybody anyplace for 4 weeks today.
Yeah.
that's the labor and equipment and contract type piece. The second piece I look at mutual aid is moving flow from point A to point B. That is also a definition of mutual aid. We have that in place with Rehoboth. And we can move part of the Rehoboth flow to a Wolf Neck. And so that bidirectional component is written in the Rehoboth agreement in the simple form of bidirectional metering. So
Our present force main is only, it's 6 inch.
It's a 6
portion
inch
of it.
from the handoff
So-
from the counties to ours, because we utilize that 6 inch
Yeah.
water line. We lined it.
So that may not be large enough to take everything.
no, and that's the one we have with Rehoboth is an 8 inch.
Yeah.
So, but it can take the 6 inch, we've pushed through the 6 inch as per our agreement, 400,000 gallons a day. So if you have a emergency at the facility and you can bleed off 400,000 gallons a day,
Oh, yeah.
that is a lot of flow you
Yeah.
do not have to contend with.
And you would be only responsible at that time, the flow at lift station 4, because the theory
How
would,
how much flow comes through the station 4? That's the largest portion, I'm sure.
I'm gonna assume probably 2/3 of the flow.
Yeah.
That's good.
So if you cut the county off on their flow, you figure we're probably around 700. So I'm assuming anywhere from about 5, maybe peak at 6.
So if I made the history to this, why it is not bidirectional, you may remember, Press, the line, the clay sewer line was dating to the 30s and 40s, from the railroad track to the bridge. And for an asset upgrade decision, and we certainly talked about that, it was your consultants, it was the management team, and it was the county team. We had no preference whether we take the pipe all the way to the pump station or whether we discharge at the track. So the decision was made because of the condition of the line and because of the condition of the laterals, that the county was asked to perform a complete upgrade of that line from point A to point B, and then discharge at the track. So hence we have what we have. So the arrangement at Wolf Point is such that it's also one directional. The piping configuration, when you look at the fittings, it would take a little bit of modification to make this bidirectional. The ones we have with Rehoboth are all triangular in shape. So you can imagine why, with the appropriate valving in place. So within 30 minutes, I can move 500,000 gallons in Rehoboth around. So, that makes our friend Kevin Williams sleep much better.
We will sleep better too, by the way. So.
He lives right next to the lift station, so that's why he's saying.
I know he lives across the street. Right?
Yeah.
But and I said this to Austin, and don't take that any wrong way. We paid for this once, and we feel it's not our obligation to make it bidirectional.
Sure.
We'd be happy to accommodate it, and we can easily accommodate it, but we would have to.
In your opinion, and by the way, I don't think that's even up for conversation. We are where we are at this point, right? If you look at going to pump station 4, we've had issues with pump station 4, and this is maybe for the board more directly. We've had issues with pump station 4. Should we have a pipe that goes to pump station 4, or should we have a pump that goes or directly from the wastewater treatment plant? Because I worry about pump station 4 as a choke point in some ways. Should there be 2 solutions here or 1 solution? And I'm not an engineer, as you guys might have figured out. I'm just worried about how I want to do this, and I want to do it the best way. I don't necessarily know what the best way is.
So reading your resume on the board's website, I made the completely wrong decision to be an engineer. Maybe Press made the right decision. He sold high. But I think what Mr. Webb's referring to is there is the partial solution, and then there is the full solution. So the partial solution will get you far.
We'll sleep better. But what is the partial? What not as good?
It's just like Commissioner Board Member Webb said, is take the pipe all the way from the pump station to the tie-in point, put the right valving in place, make some changes at Wolf Point, and you can send 500,000 gallons to the county.
You basically secure 2/3 of your flow. Now,
You're sending it direct to the plant? Or is it the one? No.
so you have 2 regionals, you have 8 and 4. Both of those go right over to the plant and into the EQ tank. If 4 goes, because you have the force main that goes underneath the canal,
Right,
if 4 goes for any reason,
okay,
we don't have a mitigation plan in place. So what Earl said is you have 2 options. Your theory would be you fix your mitigation issue with 4. And if 8 goes, if you have the ability to bypass, you could bypass to the facility, but you would have to run all your piping above ground. That's in theory if the force main goes from lift station 8 to the wastewater treatment plant. So it's you play a game. Everything is a game.
so how is that, so in other words, if one of them goes down, then the other one takes over, is that what you're saying?
No. So if you have 2 regionals, 8 and 4.
Right,
If 4 goes, where do you send the flow? That's
correct,
the question. And right now, there is no place. You would
Okay.
be running, you would have to set up.
You say
some-
something.
I know where that happened before, that just happened, right.
So the idea
We know
is,
what happened.
so the idea is when we run into a situation like that, can we flip a switch? I say that in theoretical terms and send it back to the county.
Right,
So
I
the
see what you're
downside, though, of going from the wastewater treatment plant is you still have 4. And if 4 goes down, you can bypass from the plant, but you can't get the air there.
Yeah.
So that's one of the downsides of that, because as we talked before, as you just described,
He's
pump
about to
station
say-
4, you can run over ground to the plant.
So Tom, The answer is, if you went for a holistic solution, you would have to create a way to connect the two pieces together. So in that case, like we have the ability to go both ways. As a matter of fact, if you go to the Wolf Neck tie-in point, just a little bit beyond, we tied in on the Wolf Point side. But if we tied in on the Schofield side, we have a 16-inch line available to us, which goes straight into the 30-inch. You can take 3 million gallons over there. But it really comes down to what is your preference. We are standing ready to aid. By the way, board members, Councilmember Schaefer wanted to be here. So he called me. Do you mind if I call him back and say whether he's en route or whether he wants to know where we are because he's in the parking lot? Or, if you don't mind, or whether he just tells me that he's not coming.
All right.
Yeah, I've got his number if you want.
He called me.
Okay,
If you want to call him back, that's even better.
I don't mind calling you.
Yes, just tell him we're still here, see what it is.
Austin, where is pump station 8?
On American Legion Road,
Right at the corner of Savannah?
yeah, about 100 feet from Savannah Road, on the right-hand side,
Does that take all of the canal side, the beach side?
on the beach.
So if we had a problem now, we would have to pump out of the wet well on pumping station 4, run a pipe down the road to our tie-in. Is there a connection there that we could tie into to go back?
I mean, like the lowest hanging engineering fruit, Lou,
Hey, Mark.
would be
Okay, we're here.
to create an emergency bypass connection on the railroad track,
Join us, or you wanted to join.
have a
You could come in.
diesel pump available
Tell
to
me
you,
your,
which we obviously have plenty of,
Mhm.
and have enough lay flat to get it there. Now, we would also have to make that configuration at Wolf Point.
Right.
But
if you,
that's,
that's fine. The front door is unlocked.
it will take a couple hours to do the lay flats and make sure that none of the connections come apart.
Okay.
But it can be done, I've certainly done it.
So the bi-directional part of it, now it's coming one way. If you did a bi-directional at that connection, then it would stop it there and then send it back to the Wolf Point
They wouldn't, at that
pumping
point,
station, or?
they wouldn't be sending it to us. We would
So,
basically,
I mean, we're sending it,
instead of it going to our wastewater treatment plant, it is going to their pump station.
so
At what point?
the pipe that brings it into to 4.
Yep.
Would have a valve and redirect it down to the right.
Yep.
And send it down to wherever that connection is.
Yeah.
And then it would there be sent back to your pumping station and so forth.
The lower flow, up to like a couple 100,000 gallons, we would route through our pump station. If we go higher, we need to tie it to the 16-inch line,
Oh, okay,
because at that point, we need capacity.
I understand.
So it really comes down to whatever the board requests, whether that's 0 to 100, the engineering team can accommodate.
So it's size of the pipe.
Size of the pipe, size of the equipment, and valving, but it really comes down to what do you want to implement, you know, 0 or
The spill that we had in December of 2019, would this have solved that issue?
would have mitigated 66% of the problem.
And would that have been pump station, I wasn't on the board then, would that have been pump station 8, 4, or something at the plant? Or 4. What happens if 4's working, 8's working, but something goes wrong at the plant?
Then you could take away 2/3 of your flow.
Oh, but in 2019, the spill was the plant, it was not pump station 4.
Yeah, that's why I was getting confused.
Okay.
But you could have reversed, if you had this in place, you could have reversed it.
Yeah. But I just wanted to make sure that that situation could be
Yeah.
affected as well.
What I understand of the 2019 incident is that if you had taken 2/3 of the flow away, you may have stopped the cascading effect in the nuclear power, it's a runaway, right? Tom knows about it. It became a runaway.
What's the timing to understand the numbers and how to do this from your perspective? And we have obviously worked through it as well, but what would be your guess on how long it would take?
We just wanted the on the ground equipment at hand and make the 2 piping changes. 3 months.
What about the Ferrari?
What's that?
That is,
Backup.
yeah, full backup. Like full-fledged, you're essentially standing at one place, turning the valve, and you're going. There's no effort that really goes into it.
And I'm saying 2
The
years.
equipment, just an equipment upgrade, in other words.
No, that-
The thing, the system would run the same way. It's just a serious equipment upgrade.
the full reversal of the entire facility would require a little bit more activity, a lot more dollars.
Right.
But it also, I would assume that, a lot of this, we get always hung up on permitting and right of way. So you have the full, like if you really want to get this done, we're taking 2 properties to court right now. I mean, like you have to have this is a project. Let's not talk about that. But you have to be committed to the project because otherwise it can drag out for years.
It sounds to me like what we need is an engineering study to look at cost benefit risk and various options. Because if we're trying station reliability, maybe the money should go into upgrading the pump stations so that they're reliable. If we're looking at other things, then we need to look at them. But, yeah, it would have been great if the systems were all designed way back when, so they were backed up to each other. But it's,
We got the pump stations, but we got the old pipe that runs under the canal and all the way over to the treatment plant that I worry about. I mean, that could be hit any time.
Really, the discussion is, the city has a mitigation team, and they talk about these instances where you have failures and how do you react. So looking at a business continuity plan, when you're looking at, and Darren always said it, what keeps you up at night, the theory is that what keeps you up at night. If that line goes down, what are we doing? And so that's correct. And so everybody doesn't like to talk about this situation.
There's no redundancy.
We're talking about. And so it's a lot of money. The man has a large checkbook because he also sits on WEAC, and there's a chance that ARPA funds are coming down. Would this qualify? I don't know. But
Coffee or anything?
yeah. Champagne, wine.
Give me my car.
There is a lot of money around right now. There is no question. I've never seen the funding levels I've seen. But again, I'm still waiting on this one. The allegedly ARPA comes with a suspension of NEPA and Davis-Bacon. I am not quite convinced that's really true. But that's sort of what the 20,000-foot chatter says. Let's wait till the permits are issued. But I think Tom has I know that you certainly have done that for a living. You have to have that analysis so you can make a decision of where's your root cause, how do you prevent your root cause from happening, and which one's the best way to fix it. So sort of like the asset management rule, there's the likelihood of failure and the consequence of failure. So, like I would normally like to address sort of a combination of both. You're talking to the man who spilled millions of gallons into St. John's, and the one who pumped the entire city of Milford into this building for 3 days. So I'm no stranger to.
That's no small club, unfortunately. It's not a very exclusive club.
It's a very exclusive club. So Kent being that Kent, after the Milford incident, put a 3-way consortium together, Milford, Harrington, and Kent County, to build a backup system which utilizes a part of the Harrington line. And so Milford now has two ways to get out. After the Dover incident, I do take credit for that. Dover has a full bypass on the east side. So you'd have seen a lot more newspaper reports. There is redundancy in some of the Kent systems, but it does not come cheap, and it's difficult to build.
It seems to me, it would be relatively inexpensive to be prepared to pipe it down into the system and do the configuration at the pumping station to know where the flat pipe is, to know where the diesel generator is or diesel pump is, and have that ready, because that's easy. It's relatively cheap.
You could even go as far
Provides
as,
a lot of protection.
and you and I know that in the old days, before generators were readily available at all pump stations, a lot of time we had diesel pumps permanently mounted. The ones noise suppressed today, they're probably not any noisier than a generator, probably less. And then the only thing you have to do is run pipe from that one quick disconnect to the other quick disconnect. So now you're talking a couple of hours versus trying to bring the equipment up, set it up, etc. So the big station in Dover, the one by Legislative Hall, I actually implemented that. It has permanently piped connection points where you can everything's done. I used to just have to haul in the diesel and make connections literally within 5 minutes. So after that, for a while, the county actually stationed one of the big 8-inch diesels at the Legislative Hall pump station for reliability reasons.
There's a lot of crap coming out of that. Just like a ball.
I was going to make that comment back to you. I would say,
If we did this, pipe it back to the connection, then we would need a generator to,
like you would either have to have a portable diesel pump brought in, or you can station one there permanently right next to your generator.
so you would need another pump,
You will need
another pump. So that's fine. Okay.
Because and I also always had actually practiced that at least once a year
Mhm.
in Dover to see how quickly I could get this switched over and how quickly I could get the pump set up.
Mhm.
Because sewer lives on a very tight, electric lives on the 5-minute timeline. Sewer, I think, lives on the 15 to 30-minute timeline.
Depending on what day of the week it is.
But if you think about, right, we had 2 pumps that went down at pump station 4, and we had a backup that didn't have suction for different reasons. I mean, what are the chances of 3 things going bad that fast? I mean, it's not having an insurance plan, which is what I would consider this is, at least at pump station 4 to start, and not because I lived there. I just think it's probably the easiest to do initially. I think we'd be crazy not to start looking at that in a very material way.
I agree.
The probability is high if it's Friday night.
What would you have like just a ballpark guess of what that would cost?
I would permanently mounted, you think?
Let's say yes. Yeah.
Yeah, let's go.
This is the down and dirty version. So you have the 2, you have the Ferrari, and then you have the quick and easy.
Between the equipment, the pumps will run, this kind of pump will run you 70-some thousand.
Yeah.
And then you have to, do all the suction piping, et cetera. Do the quick disconnects, you're up to 100 on the other side, 30, 40 each. So you're about 200 by the time you get all in. You got to buy the hose, 50 grand, 250. 250 should get you there.
If you wanted the Ferrari.
You have to have a route first.
Yeah.
Because, you can't guess on
So, and I'm not trying to, but 250 is pump station 4.
pump station 4 with a solution to be implemented in less than 2 hours.
Meaning if everything was fully in place.
And if you did pump station 4 at what was the car you used?
Ferrari?
No, not the Ferrari.
Yeah.
The lower part.
That's where you're
Forget-
talking about.
oh, you go there. The cheap solution at $250,000, we'll call it that. What would be the cost for just that location to make it the Ferrari solution?
That would be in my opinion, the preferred one. But that would mean you have to redig Gills Neck Road. It's not gonna make you happy. You lived through the first one.
I'd be happy living through the second one.
So
I may get a shovel and up and help you.
we would install permanent piping. We would install the pump, obviously the diesel pump hooked up to a permanent underground pipe, make the connection all the way, make the connection at the other end. At that point, we're down to 15 to 30 minutes. How fast can you get to the valves?
So the difference is 2 hours versus 15 minutes.
And does it work the same way, or or better?
It's better in the sense that
Timing, other than timing.
normally it's like you always consider, let's just say it does happen on a holiday weekend.
Of course.
There's gonna be all kinds of traffic on Gills Neck Road while we're trying to lay pipe, coupling things up.
That's not good.
Tripping hazards left, right, and center. Mike's still listening. He's probably want to have change our insurance policy, your insurance policy.
So if we did the solution, which is the $250,000 solution, is there any lost money associated with then upgrading that at some point, once we decide to uncover Gills Neck Road
Yeah.
to the Ferrari solution? Is there lost money associated with that?
You wouldn't need the pipe. You brought the temporary pipe. You would not need the quick disconnect connections. They would be all underground. So you probably, out of the 250, you probably spend 75. You don't need.
So it's 75 of some cost,
Mhm.
but the rest of it's goes towards the Ferrari solution.
But the inexpensive solution does not solve the issue of the one under the canal pipe not working, does it?
Because now you're intercepting.
The bypass, yeah, you're not even getting that far.
Because everything's going from, everything's
So it
going,
does though.
yeah, because everything's going from pump station 4 to the county. It doesn't have to go on your,
Well, but you're ignoring
But I mean, like
the
going back to
canal.
Tom's analysis,
But you're
you
ignoring
know, if you look at
that's
your
which is,
Hmm?
which one.
points of failure
Well, but it,
and the
Depending.
significance of failure,
That's what we're doing.
there's a low likelihood
yeah,
the pipe
what he
will
was
fail
all,
on
it's all in the
the
entire community.
but the significance of it is tremendous.
Yes.
So the entire Southern County system on the east side hangs on one crossing under the ditch, right by Harpoonzana. Thousands of connections in commercial businesses. So probably first year of Hans's tenure, I said, this is a critical point of failure with catastrophic consequences. So it was not easy, but we got a second pipe under the ditch. There's no other reason I can switch, we're only using one at a time. But I can switch that main pump station, which moves all the flow from the entire Fenwick area and northern, by the way, Sussex County serves several streets on Ocean City side, did you know that? So all that flow, we can switch to the second pipe, so.
What's the likelihood of us calling you saying, hey, it's Labor Day weekend, this has happened? What's the ability that you actually have to take anything from us?
The beauty of the Wolf Neck facility is a tremendous amount of storage. We could take 10 days worth of Lewes, wouldn't blink an eye.
There's another part you haven't talked about, and that's the public perception. If you're gonna run all this stuff superficial or on the surface, you're opening yourself a lot more for criticism. And, you know, if you're just doing it as a temporary fix.
So is the Ferrari part, the only difference is you're putting everything underground? Everything else is the same.
For pump station 4, we're talking just.
Only pump station.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. The least expensive one is putting the pipe on the ground. The Ferrari is putting it underground. Everything else is the same, pretty much. No, okay.
You know, if you start running a pipe from Ford across the trail, the fallout publicly is gonna be really ugly.
Yeah, what about if it goes?
We're actually on the right side of.
Yeah, no, we wouldn't go onto the trail. We won't, I mean,
See what you
across the
did there.
trail.
I said to the trail. I thought I said, but maybe.
No, but it's on this, it's on the opposite side of the road from the trail.
On the city side of the trail, yeah.
Versus the county side.
Let me just ask this question again.
In front of Earl's house.
But so just make sure I understand what Tom was articulating.
Of Gill's Neck Road.
The Ferrari is underground.
So
The Miata, whatever you want to call it, is above ground.
That's right. Surface.
That's for.
Yeah, so you're gonna come from in front of your house.
Yeah.
Isn't the pipe going this way?
correct.
Can you go into
So
that?
this is the bay over here.
I don't think you're gonna get into that quite the Army
You're not
corridor.
going across the trail.
Yeah, you'd be going across the road.
Essentially.
You have
Two smartest people
you would
told me no, it's only-
pipe above ground.
And everything
To the railroad.
To the railroad.
Yes.
But it would never be across the road. Where would it cross the road?
So what are
Well,
the
that
three
pipe
problems?
goes
The
down the
plant,
same
there's the
direction.
plant, there's.
So you
eight-
still look like
Goes down the center
pump
of the
station
road.
eight goes down.
Yeah, eight replants.
And then the flex of the other one would.
All right, we got two conversations going. Let's,
Pressure pipe would have
should we
to be
finish
on
this?
one side or the other.
Yeah, you'd probably put it on the canal side.
Yeah.
No, we, Mayor,
You would put it on the other side?
no, Mayor, we have to put it on the side where the water is not.
The water is not. Oh, yeah, of course, of course. But I would imagine that the water is on this side. I don't know. Austin might know offhand. Is the water on the residential side or the canal side?
I think it's,
On Gill's Neck.
I have the plan.
It has to be
I'd have
10
look
feet
at it.
apart.
Right. So you
So what you need, we need to know where that is. So
I think
that's a
the
good
water, I think
question.
the water's on the canal side. When we were looking at the drawings, I thought the force main was on this side,
water mains on the canal side?
I think.
Okay.
Don't hold me to the
Oh,
fire.
yeah.
It's a smaller convenience, you know, which side of the road it goes on doesn't matter.
It's just a matter of which lane do we dig up.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's better to be in the ground than to be above the ground. With what you're
Yeah, no, I think we should look at both things and see what the cost is and so forth.
What's your estimate for the Ferrari just for pump station 4?
I didn't give you one.
I know. Because I got everything circled and I don't have anything there.
I'm not comfortable telling.
Give me a range.
Put the $1 million.
Billion versus $250,000.
You've got repaving, ripping the road up, repaving the road, trenching, piping. I mean,
Traffic maintenance.
Yeah.
We have to cross every single service line.
It's a big job, but it's still the better way to go.
I don't think it's a choice.
I don't see it as a choice. In terms of long term.
Yeah.
If you're talking about crisis, it's a different story.
Keep in mind, I'm talking construction costs, so depending on what we should, these are not difficult engineering jobs, but there's some soft cost involved.
Again, that's why we're having this workshop, to have these discussions, because we haven't really sat down and had them prior. And we're sitting here and we're tapping into another resource, which is Hans. So we're having these discussions. At this point, he's a consultant because he has this experience. So again, it's a resource and a teamwork effort that is always there. We're just trying to solidify it even more. I think that's an easy way to.
If I may recap for our councilman's benefit. Good to see you again, Mark.
I feel like when you called this,
we're doing this at 2:00, so. No, the president was generous enough to move us up an hour, which allowed me to give these presentations to you first. I think the lowest one, which will come quickly to an agreement for mutual aid on the labor and equipment and contractual side. The other one would be on the flow exchange side, which we were just discussing. And the third one, it's really already written in the agreement, is to utilize our existing infrastructure to serve certain pieces in the boundaries where it would where we would spend more to serve ours, or this board would spend more to serve theirs. That does not change where you pay your bill to. It just changes where your flow goes.
Understood. Because they'd have to pay you for yeah, I got it, yeah.
And as I said, there's the pump station 4 solution, and then, like Tom was saying, that the next would, if you wanted to go beyond that, because we can easily understand the options there. If you want to go to a full system solution, you really should engage in I've certainly done these, and I have a pretty good idea of what it would look like, but I think you want to pick somebody, make sure they understand the scope, and then direct them to do that.
So pump station 4, there would have to be an individual solution for that, and an individual solution for 8, and a potential solution for just the plant.
A hybrid where you connect the stations, so you essentially take all the flow off.
Yeah.
See, if you remove all the inflow, you don't need a plant solution because you have.
You've got the beach, you got the whole beach community, so then you don't need the state, then the processing plant becomes dormant.
Right now, the pipe as it exists on Gills Neck Road can move 4 back. If you want to have the full solution, we would have to take the pipe all the way to the Wolf Point entrance and make it larger. Now you're taking the whole system to Wolf Neck.
How do we do the next steps on this? What's the process?
Well,
Who I'm talking to.
so I would think on the mutual aid from the equipment, the manpower and so forth, that will be between Hans, myself, Mike, the county attorney, and that'd be an ongoing kind of develop everything. The issue or the discussion on pump station 4 would be where we would have to go and have a conversation with Hans, GMB, whoever we want to utilize at that point to kind of discuss the feasibility of it. And if we want to see if we can pull some ARPA funding together for it to go after the full blown, or if we want to do a study to see if we can mitigate the entire risk of both 8 and 4. It's kind of the will of the board on how in depth you want to be and how in depth we want to be. It's like Hans had said, if you have a solution for both 8 and 4, you don't really, I don't say you don't need to, but it lowers the risk of the plant, if it makes sense.
The thing is, if we do it for the entire system, okay, that's going to be extremely expensive. But if we did it, we could do away with the treatment plant.
That's
Yeah. So you could handle it.
You can do it with the whole thing.
Now have the ability to do away with it.
You have the ability, theoretically, not that you want to or that you would do it, but you could.
I think the question would be, would you have the capacity?
That's my question.
Today, no. That
In the future, though,
there was a famous commissioner of the levy court once told me that he wanted a certain decision go one way, and he wanted the answer to be no. And I said, that it doesn't work that way. It's either yes or no would be determined scientifically, or yes with improvements. It's not because you said so.
Well, I was gonna say, because doing the way Florida treated that, I mean, the reason why we're sending us 500,000 gallons is because Wolf Neck doesn't have the infiltration rates in the wintertime, right?
We would need our ability to use our pipes to put it into the canal.
We have a seasonal limitation.
Right, that's right.
And you alleviated the seasonal limitations. By the way, we have one last step left to do under the agreement. And we're actually in the timeline, we could ask for the additional 25%. But I think these issues here are more important to get them resolved because they need to be resolved, because I don't want that to get hung up in the discussion. And I don't think the county commissioners want that.
No, I agree. I think this is really important. We need to just really zero in on this thing.
But if I may answer your question, if I had the choice between a land treatment system and an NPDS permit, I would take the NPDS permit any day, every day. Land treatment systems are complex.
So if you end up taking over the plant, could you use our ability to put water into the canal?
I would find a location to build a facility which will put the water in there.
Because it's temperature.
It's very, there's the Milton example. Have you heard about what Milton proposed?
No.
So Milton is no longer owned by Milton.
Yeah,
Right. So the operator, the owner of the system, which is Tidewater, I guess no longer.
I was gonna say,
No, they-
Not in the near future, but they had proposed and implemented the design of a alternate treatment plant, which takes the plant from the currently flooded location, i.e. very similar to your exposure, right there by the Broadkill, to a higher ground of, what's that road called? Cave Neck Road, right? Is it Cave Neck?
16? I mean.
That would be
Where my-
16.
No, it's not
It's the road,
I know what you're talking about.
yeah, it's, anyway.
Goes right into Milton.
So they take the treatment plant from an elevation 3 to an elevation 30. But they're running the pipe all the way back to the discharge point for that reason and that reason alone.
So it's outflow.
So they would be spending a couple $1 million on nothing but get the water from point A to the plant and back. Because I have to give them credit, my friends from Tidewater realized they don't want to own a land treatment system. So the exposure here is certainly critical, but don't give up your permit. Find a place where you can put the thing so it doesn't flood.
So this is the wastewater treatment plant in here, I think.
Yep, you're right on it.
That's right.
Right over here is outside of the 500-year floodplain, is my understanding. Right on the other side of the Freeman Bridge.
That's all Denmark owned land.
If I was gonna build a plant and want water access, that's where I would look.
Publicly on the subject.
Well, I will tell you, I've been attending a NOAA webinar, 5 thing, and the one today was on precipitation and Atlas 14. And the current 100-year forecasts are actually more like 40 to 80 year. And by the end of the century, it will be the 20-year events. So building an entire new facility.
So then we should take, then you're saying we should take that facility out tomorrow. That's what you just said.
No, that's not what I said.
Well, if you're saying it's not worth building in a 500-year, in something that's not in the 500-year floodplain, taking something that's out in the 100-year floodplain, we should do that tomorrow.
It's already there and we can mitigate till we decide what we're going to do in the long term. But breaking ground and putting in a brand new facility,
It's
That's
not in the
designed for-
500-year floodplain.
what's that?
It's not in the 500-year floodplain. What would your solution be in 200 years?
I don't think that's subject for discussion right now.
But I hate to say, we do need to start thinking long term. We really do.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing with that, but I personally think the next step, and once again, I apologize, I'm a nuclear engineer, but we need to put down what we're trying to solve, what the potential solutions are, because what Hans and Emma was described about pump station 4 doesn't consider the other alternative of what would the cost be of putting in a second pipe under the canal and building in the redundancy to the pump station to mitigate it versus the cost of, running a pressure main back to the county.
Tom,
If that's the solution we're trying.
if I may, the improved pump station reliability from the discharge side and the operational side does not buy you the backup on the plant failure side. Now we're looking at only at one loss. The other option we're talking about mitigates 2 losses. So that is,
It mitigates 1.5 losses, because you still have everything from the beach flowing to the
Yeah.
plant. So, I take your point, it reduces the impact, but it doesn't resolve it without doing other major steps.
Pump station 4, that's the pump station.
Yeah.
And if you look at all the new stuff that's coming online, that's where it's coming in. So it's not a half solution, it's probably a 70% solution.
Austin said it. He said 2/3.
Okay, I said 70%. I'm off. I was in finance, I'm pretty close. To me, that's a no-brainer. That is
Yeah. No,
absolutely
no.
no-brainer.
This thing really does mitigate
It's the cheapest insurance policy we're ever gonna buy.
going underneath the canal and everything else. Pump station 4 is it. If you can turn the flow around at pump station 4,
Hold on,
you're stopping everything going to the canal, to the plant.
we are engineering things here. Wait,
Yeah.
it does not mitigate the failure of the pipe under the canal, because it gives us time to recover, but then we still have to put a second pipe in.
No, I understand that.
So,
I know, but I'm
do
talking about
we-
pump
do
station
we-
4
Do
problem.
we bite the bullet and put the second pipe in because we have concerns? Or
Which pipe in?
Yeah,
No,
well,
remember there's a cascade involved in these decisions. If your plant location is a 10-year location, you're not putting the pipe in. You're looking at, I have strapped portable pipe or temporary pipes, HG pipes, to delve up bridges before. So it can be done. Is that you want to have a plan what happens when it fails.
and
And if your plant is a 100-year facility, by all means, you put that second pipe in tomorrow.
We can do both at that point. You put the second pipe in and you also do the connection with the county.
Yeah.
yeah, well, anyone who said that the plant is good for 10 years, I mean,
The life expectancy of the facility site should drive any and all decisions.
absolutely, I could not agree with you anymore.
you have to decide what data you're looking at.
And which,
Are you looking at 100 years or you're looking at
And
50 years?
And right now, we're doing the study on the plant and flooding and what the most limiting aspects of that are and how can they be mitigated. So, I mean, if the answer for
When
that
did we
is,
start doing that?
what's that?
When did we start doing that?
About 6 months ago?
you talking about the elevation certificate?
Yeah, well, this-
Oh, that, yeah. Well, we got that back, right?
They had to be fixed because they were wrong. How did they look? It's 9 feet. I mean, you're dealing with the same, like, when you're talking about risk, right? The lowest spot in the plant in terms of operation is the drying beds. But if you have an event where you're in question, you're obviously not pouring the drying beds. So you can kind of push that to the side in a way, but you're still, I mean, if you get hit by a Category 3 hurricane, to put it frank, you're up Schitt's Creek without a paddle. And you're trying to, and you start to think about, like, when I look at it from the background in operations, I look at it from Tom's standpoint of you either put a second line in or you connect to the county. My opinion, I would connect to the county first and then talk about a second line second.
Exactly.
Because if the plant goes down, you still don't solve the problem of where do you send the flow. So you have to look at it from a standpoint of, like Hans said, risk mitigation. Where do you spend your money now versus where do you spend your money in the future? If the plant's staying where it is, put the second line in, but you fix 2/3 of your problem by having this discussion with Hans. So this is, we're not solving first world problems in this meeting. We're just having a conversation, because really, I don't know if we've ever had this conversation in this capacity before.
I mean, this may be semantics, but I don't think we're fixing 2/3 of the problem, because if the plant is down and it's still processing nothing, we're still, so.
Yeah, I'm using it.
I understand. That's what I said.
Where that number came in is that 2/3 of the waste comes from the other, from.
I understand, right.
So that's how
It's-
the nomenclature came.
It's not like we're solving 2/3 of the problem, because there still is a problem.
We're solving 2/3 of the waste that will go into the
Right.
canal.
We're diverting 2/3 of the waste, that's fine.
I can live with that.
Not sure.
And putting an extra pipe under, and that's it. Isn't gonna do hardly anything except give us an extra, if the other pump doesn't work. What we're talking about here is diverting the flow to the county. That's not even worrying about putting it under the canal.
You gotta look at what your faults are. So the pump station goes down, we need to look at strengthening the pump station so that we have N-1, N-2 redundancy. The pipe under the canal going, someone drags an anchor across it, they dredge across it, whatever. It's old is another problem. You've got to take your faults and figure out how the solution is resolved.
I agree with you 100%. My point is, the first thing I think we need to do is deal with pump station number 4. I think there are a lot of things that have to be fixed in pump station number 4. But I think let's just say the turnaround back to the county gives us a very good safe valve for now at a reasonably low cost. And I'm not against putting the pipe under the canal, another pipe under the canal. I think that's a great idea. But the first thing I think we need to do is get the pump station number 4 from sending things, if they can't, over to the.
That's where 70 to 75% of our problem is going to come from.
Yeah.
If not today, tomorrow.
I do not think the public would think highly if you said that I was going to reduce the emissions from a nuclear plant by reducing the outflow from the containment by 2/3. And that's the way I view it, so.
But the good news is this isn't rocket science. This is sewage. And if you can solve 70% of a problem, you can solve the problem we had the other day.
Can I put this in the nuclear perspective?
You're probably the only one that can have it.
When you look at the dispersion of the pollutant, if I only put 1/3 of the pollutant in there, but I have the same mixing model, so the dispersion is much less.
Solution to pollution is dilution.
Well, in this case, it comes down to, we're not diluting it more, we're just not, it doesn't mitigate as much. So the same thing holds true if you have an atmospheric release. So if you have less material, the exposure is less.
If somebody came to us and said, for $1 million, you can solve 70% of your potential error. Forget whether it's pump station 4 or 8 or 2. I take that every day. I would take that every single solitary day.
And if you put the additional pipe under the canal, you should pump it back over so you take 100% across, because you could.
But I'm just saying, for $1 million, this thing started.
Because remember, the pipe on Gill's Neck has a limitation of 500,000 gallons.
Yeah, can't take care of it. That's only a partial
So
solution.
we started.
It will always be
And that's why I said $1 million versus the.
There'll always be a backup.
it will always be a partial.
But it's for 70%. My gosh, I would sleep better tonight. I stay up at night when it rains hard. If what happened in New Jersey happened to us, or what happened in New Orleans happened to us, I can't imagine what we'd be up against.
We would turn it off.
So we got it turned off before, but I'm just saying that's a cheap solution, in my opinion. So
We do have to look at pump station number 4 and to see what needs to be done to get at least some
I agree.
fixed right now,
Wait,
like the 90-degree.
2 pump stations went out and the backup went out. What are the odds of any of that happening? Someone would say, well, that's bulletproof. We got 3 pumps.
We had 2 smaller pumps around on California last week.
I'm just saying, what looks like it makes sense no longer makes sense.
Yeah.
But you also have to look at, and I look at this all the time on the rear, is whether the investment, the cost benefit of the investment makes sense. You see, like, when we look at the nutrient removal projects, a lot of the MS4 nutrient removal projects, when you look at how many pounds of nitrogen are removed by the random acts of conservation, by putting one of these nicely planted median strips in, the cost per pound is 100 times more than us taking a septic system offline. So I many times questioned, sometimes voted against these projects because I said, they're absolutely not cost effective. They're not sustainable.
Does this one seem cost effective to you?
Yeah, yes, it does. I mean, like this is strictly from a pollutant reduction standpoint. Now, but you're also looking at somebody like who has a much higher pain threshold for
I guarantee it's higher than mine.
for an emergency repair.
So given your high threshold for emergency repair, would you do the backup for pump station 8? If you were us?
8 or 4.
8 or 4.
Oh, sorry, 4.
Oh, 100%. That's a, yeah, I've implemented much more difficult projects, but that's a yes. But I would not, like sometimes, if you take if you have good asset management and you have good preventive measures in place and mitigating measures in place, there can be the odd chance when the 2 belts or the 1 belt and the suspender breaks and you do have a discharge, you can stand before the public with a clean conscience and say, we were prepared. However, there is acts of God and they happen. It hardly hits us. I mean, my daughter lives in Texas. After 20 some inches of rain in 48 hours, I would be turning half of our pump stations off.
So Press talked about moving the wastewater treatment plant. If we look at, so you opened that door a little bit, so I apologize.
No.
As far as managing our wastewater treatment plant, is that something you guys could do?
That is,
And I know I just opened Pandora's box, right?
as I said to Darren, I said to Austin before, and I think I said to Chris.
Yeah.
With the appropriate notice. Because remember, this is not a county engineer decision. I would have to go to county council and say, please give us the authorization to put a proposal together to operate the facility. I think by us sending you 400,000 gallons in the winter and much less a flow in the summertime, just like Rehoboth, in Seaford, we want the facility to be up. We are interested in 100% uptime.
So the connectivity buys a piece of that.
The only difference between the county and the staff you hire is the staff you hire is interested in permit compliance, don't get me wrong, but also profits. They are not that much in tune with percent uptime. For us, as the owner of the permit, we are interested in 100% uptime. So any of the county's facilities I have to sign for, we think of, we cannot be down for 1%. It's a sewer is.
You guys looked at something with with Rehoboth at one point.
We have it in place now.
What's in place with them?
We can move well over 500,000 gallons back and forth.
But Rehoboth still operates their own facility.
Yes.
Did you guys look at operating their facility at one point?
At one point they asked us, but then they hired our staff.
Can I get the number for your staff?
And they're probably going away. And then we
Exactly.
and then we signed the biosolids agreement, and then we emptied that digester, and they said, great, we're doing much better, thank you very much.
Well, this is very good. I think we've got, well, we had
relative to what we're talking about right now, we have I would like to have us deal with pump station 4. And I think we had two things to deal with. One is this, the turnaround, I'll just call it that. And the other is the pump station itself and what, if anything, needs to be done to make it better.
Well, probably vote first on the mutual aid. agreement that we got taken, Press.
Yeah, well, I think, yeah, we need to vote on that, I suppose, but do we need to get an agreement? Or-
We, the team, the management team and the legal team will present
Okay.
as they draft.
I got it, okay.
So Press, do we accept that or do we do a vote to enact that?
I think we can give them our nod.
I think
before
I
the
just get
agreement
ready to talk.
that we can present.
Press, this is Mike Hoffman, just to clarify, I am still here. This is a workshop discussion, so it's just for consensus.
Yes.
There's not an actual vote. It's just consensus to direct staff.
Right, that's, we were saying, right,
That's fine.
Press, can I ask a quick question?
sure.
I hope I'm not wasting your time because I don't understand. You said you can take 66% of the flow to the glade. Is that what you're saying?
Not today.
But you're delivering 400.
It's a one directional. It's a one directional.
Right now, it's one directional.
Put the new valve in.
It's more than that. Part of it is by gravity, so we have to put pipe in the ground.
So if you do all that, you have the capacity over there to take it?
For a day, for 2 days, for 10 days, for 3 weeks, yes. Not for ever.
We're talking about,
You'll never close down a facility in Lewes. Whether it's where it is or across the street, you're still gonna need a facility, right?
Question was asked before. And I think you all asked it, is the location they have, is this a 100-year location?
I understand.
But that means wherever the location may be, the location could be differently. It could be a different facility, it could be a different operator. For sake, the city of Rehoboth could operate, so.
Yeah, but they're always gonna have a facility because you don't have capacity, right?
Right now, we have seasonal limitations, which are bridged by allowing us to go through the discharge point here.
And how do you overcome those seasonal issues?
Started in 2015, and in 2016, we signed the first agreement with the Lewes Board of Public Works because of we quickly realized that our seasonal limitations are weather dependent. They're not limited to equipment, staff, or anything else. We had no control over them. We needed a place where we could discharge every day, any day, a given quantity.
the second floor we were talking about is a case of an emergency.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't be using it every day, it just at all. It would just be if the pump station failed like it did a couple of weeks ago, then we would have this available for us until we could get it up and running again, which is,
I guess my question was, if Lewis just said, we want to get out of the business, what do you got to do at your facility, Hans, to take everything from Lewis?
First, I would ask, can I buy the NPDS permit now?
Yeah, right. Do you need to buy more real estate, which isn't available? Do you need to?
The permit is.
You need all the drainage.
Yeah, we're gonna do the outflow.
We'll figure that out. That's smart. The permit is the vehicle to the solution. Without the vehicle, we ain't going anywhere.
All right, so what do they want for the permit?
That's what I was wondering.
Okay.
I gotta go.
No. Mark, thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
But I think I'm very, very thankful to have that opportunity to give the board that perspective. You have something which is extremely valuable.
So we have.
Can I ask one?
Go ahead. Yeah.
So what comes out of your plant? Hold on a second.
Drinking water.
I'm not gonna ask this correctly. I'm not gonna ask this correctly. But if we look at what comes out of your plant, is it the same water quality that's coming out of our plant?
Because we have a land treatment system permit. If we were,
So it goes in
if we were to send effluent to your permitted outfall site, we would have to make upgrades at Wolf Neck.
Got it.
Now, if you have a discussion about the facility location, the county would like to be part of that discussion. I think that would, for us not to want to be part of this, the president and I speak, Mr. Vince and I speak once a week. He's a very in tune public works guy. And he certainly understands where we are and where we need to go in our 20-year, we have a 20-year plan, what we have to do to keep the capacity ahead of us. So we always have spare capacity ahead of us. And if we were to lose the ability to send the flow to the Lewes outfall, we would absolutely have to be part of the discussion, because that is so vital to our picture. If you took that out of the equation, I would go to county council tomorrow and say, I need another 1,000 acres.
But if we
Regardless, we need another 1,000 acres.
And I'm saying things I really don't understand. So if the water that you send to us goes through your treatment plant, it's not of a quality that we could directly put into the canal.
No.
If we took it through our plant though, and it was already clean in your plant, and then it got truly scrubbed in our plant, that can go into the canal.
Yes, but that's not how it works. We would have to lay a pipe directly to your filtration facility to get that polishing step. So that's sort of it's doable, but it's not economical to do that.
The flow that the county sends us is raw sewage.
I knew that. I was trying to think if they sent us treated sewage.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It would be easier for us to clean that and then use our.
We will be engaging in a bigger regional discussion very soon. I don't,
Who's we? I mean, what do you talking about us?
no, we as the county council has made some inquiries.
What if I told you I was scared that you were gonna try to take over our plant? What would you say?
We wouldn't take over your plant because we can't.
What if you were the operator of our plant and I was worried that you were gonna take over our plant?
But you own the facility, you own the permit. I can't take that from you.
Mike Hoffman, would that be a correct statement?
Sorry, I had to unmute. That is consistent with my understanding.
Okay. I'm allowed to ask dumb questions, so. I apologize.
I took your car?
Yeah.
We need to get more on this for sure, but we need to get your draft, agreements and so forth. But we have some other properties we needed to deal with.
Let me get to the third mutual aid, and that's utilization of existing facilities.
Mhm.
I'm always big on that because duplication of facilities costs nothing but money. So we will be back with a draft agreement for your consideration. And we will, if I understand it correctly, you're authorizing management to sit down with George Knowles and Bureau and the county to give you better backstops for the pump station 4 options. Is that the way?
That's fine, right?
So the third one is already on the list. Do we have a pointer? Do you have a laser pointer?
I'll make it easier.
He's the pointer.
Okay.
Pick your first one.
Okay, so let's start with show fee. Currently, the agreement says we are sending flow 1 point, that's the railroad check. You have the ability to send us flow for the city portions of Schofield, which are, it's the ones around the pond. It's all of that piece. No, that's not.
This is your pond right here.
Yeah,
That's Freeman Highway. That's the first parcel, second parcel, and third.
That's all goes back to parcels.
no, these are the Gilsnick parcels. The Schofield parcels are,
The Schofield parcels, the other piece, right up to, that's where the circle is. That's that's White Marsh.
White's Pond.
White's Pond.
Okay, so the Schofield pieces are this one and this one.
Yes.
Yeah, that's all city stuff.
Not these.
Right.
So they can already flow to us by gravity. The connections are already built in the pump stations to size the tip. The parcel which the mayor is referring to, which can flow to Schofield. And the engineers have asked us is this piece.
Okay.
That is not a Schofield piece.
No, it's not. It was, I thought that the Schofield owners had purchased it.
No.
They haven't
But
yet.
but the sewer, this road here, existing gravity sewer, is deep enough to serve this parcel.
Okay.
So it would make sense to add this parcel to the agreement.
Except that we already have a sewer line out to the house, the Smith house on Gilsneck Road, right? Don't you already pick up the wastewater from the Smith house on Gilsneck Road?
I don't think you have a gravity line on Gilsneck Road beyond the railroad track.
Uh-uh.
I do not,
Oh, okay.
I don't think
There's
so.
water out there, I thought,
No, water's out there all the
but
way
no
out.
sewer. Okay.
I don't think it's sewer.
So infrastructure is there. As I said, Mayor, these are still your customers. They don't know that their flow is going to Sussex County.
Yeah.
That's all.
That would be a different situation because we would be serving them water at that point and electric because that's in the electric.
Yeah,
So-
you're already there with part of it.
Yeah, billing wise, that one doesn't change. The anomalies are what now is Oyster Cove, which is right here.
Which is already included in the agreement, yes.
Correct. And then the Orchard, which would be an extension of the agreement because it's everything on Old Orchard and new. And then we have Ritter Lane, which is this.
Yeah.
Which is the extension. The county already has gravity in here.
We have gravity at the railroad track, yeah.
You have Covey Creek already
Sir,
served at gravity.
And then we're about 10 feet deep at the railroad track, which is enough to serve the Ritter parcels.
so this is on discussion for tomorrow's board meeting. It's an item for discussion, mainly just the Orchard and the Ritter property. That is preliminary. That just came up. That's just a modification of the original agreement for the flow. But
Orchard and the Ritter property.
You're serving it has concerns for me because of the parcel that appears to be landlocked, that actually isn't landlocked, which the city would have great interest in annexing.
not that it matters to you,
It's
Trey.
an irregular shaped triangular or rectangular piece.
We have no service to that.
Yeah.
Well, no, but you would have service to it if you came in Ritter Lane.
No, we don't. We would run out of gravity. You know, the only reason I even entertained Ritter Lane because I'm 10 feet deep and I can serve it by gravity. I would not, Mayor, I've always told every elected official and everybody who I've worked for, if I don't have 250 paying customers per pump station, we're losing money. So I would certainly not want another pump station for 20 units.
Well, no, I'm not saying you would, but that rectangular piece could easily be more than 250.
Yeah, but that's, as soon as it can, remember, duplication of services. If we have to put a pump station in and you have to put a pump station in, you're putting it in. And I would love for you to serve the Orchard. That's a total nuisance to me.
Well, they're already serving Oyster Cove.
Yeah, but that's new development versus having to do remediation project for 30 units.
It's a nuisance for anybody, I understand.
By all means, it
Yeah,
is sand in the gears. And I hate to say this to these poor folks out there.
No, and it's because then you're looking at costs, right? It's all baked into the
Oh,
house that
no.
they're buying.
I mean, like For us to do a remediation project for 700 units, it's the same administrative effort to do one for 30.
I understand, but then aren't you also then going to be, what are you doing with Nassau Grove? Are you already in there with a gravity system?
Nassau Grove is,
Right across the street from the orchard. Right across Old Orchard and New Road, on the other side of the road.
yes, we do have a pump
Right
station.
here.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
you
you're
have a pump
already
station.
right there.
You have a pump station right here on the,
Yes,
actually, it's the
and
10th block.
the gravity runs New Road all the way.
And then you've got, I would assume with that sitting there, you're also going to be picking up all of that property that Shell just bought.
Yes,
That 131 units plus the 10 houses on the road.
Yes.
I don't want the 10 houses on the road.
Well, they're coming with it. I think they're already on the market.
Yeah, they
As
are.
you know, the 131 houses are already at plus for review.
Mayor, do you know the coal rule?
Yeah,
Do you know the coal? rule?
I know. Go ahead.
Councilman Cole told me very early in my career, 2015,
Yeah,
when I brought forward a sewer extension.
yeah.
I said, Mr. County Engineer, does this parcel have land use approval? You know, I'm a sewer guy. So I said, I don't really know. He said, it doesn't.
Well, the 10 houses already has approval.
So he told me, don't come back unless the land use decisions have been made.
Okay, well, but the land use decision, those 10 lots on New Road have already been subdivided.
Yes, but they're not in the sewer district. They're in tier 2.
They're in what?
They're in the second sewer tier. They would have to petition to come in, just like like the orchards.
Meaning they would be on second?
If they were to issue a permit, if they were to issue a building permit today, if they don't have sewer service to the lot already, which they may have,
I have no idea.
but if they don't, for us, the engineering department, to deal with the one-off strip lots, that's not sand in the gears, that's gravel in the gears. That is just throwing wrenches in my operation.
So again, just,
You run that pipe for us, we'll take care of that.
so we
I like
served
it. That's off the record. That was-
That's all right, I'll go over it.
That was just a joke.
So just as, and we'll have this discussion tomorrow, Oyster Cove, we currently serve right now 26 units. It's a brand new development. So essentially the infrastructure is being turned over to us. I'm coming to you tomorrow for 2 discussions. One is talking about serving the Orchard and the Ritter and whether or not it's the will of the board to serve them or. Pun intended, I'm a shitty salesman.
You're obligated, it's in your.
Yeah. And then we have to come up with a rate, because once we do this for one, we're gonna have to do it for everybody else.
Can I ask a question?
How long's your rate? I'm sorry.
You know, if I can ask the same question.
Does the count, forgive me, I should know this, but the wastewater rate, is it tied to water? I was gonna ask you how you handle these situations.
It can't be, we have these discussions all the time. Still, the majority of our customers, after 40-some years in the sewer business, are not central water customers. They have wells,
I can attest, I am one of those people.
so which means we would have to try to meter. Out of 75,000 customers, probably at least 40,000 are not metered. I can't even fathom what it would take to get 40,000 easements signed to put meters on their wells.
So you have a charge directly then for the sewer charge.
Okay.
Based on you.
I was just asking if you had a better
No,
practice.
There's no meters, you're just a charge.
Yes, and keep in mind, I did that analysis just to satisfy myself. Almost 80% of our expenses are fixed expenses. They do not fluctuate with flow. So if nobody flushes tomorrow, I have 80 cents of every dollar spent.
So if something's in our area and we would rather have you serve it than us, will you serve it?
Only if we have readily available infrastructure without making an improvement.
I.e. these.
So if you had, all you had to do was put the lateral in
you could do that.
They're happy to
Yeah.
do it.
Mhm.
And the agreement speaks to that. The agreement
Yeah.
says that's what we should be doing.
Yeah, exactly. It makes
But
sense.
it makes no sense for us to put a pump station in if it's in your territory. They
Mhm.
should put the pump station in and connect to you.
And we don't need it.
So, and what Hans had said, administratively, we have to go for an existing development. We have to do all of the administrative legwork to get that process moving and get it done. We would bill, you would bill it in their taxes, we would bill it in their monthly bill as a loan. So you can slice it any way you want to. Again, the reason that I'm bringing it up and the reason Hans is because if it's the will of the board to not serve them, then it also makes sense not to serve Oyster Cove, because then you have a real anomaly out there. But if it is the will, then we need to move towards having a rate that works out there, because right now, if we just did ready to serve, it'd be 75.50 off a 5/8 meter, Tidewater serving them water, so. That would be, so monthly cost to them would be 75.50 if you base it off of a 5/8 meter plus whatever the cost of actually putting the infrastructure in. And I don't know if you'd have to tear up roads or reconstruct that, which is a whole nother animal to deal with.
Yes.
Did you say you wanted to do it? Is that what you said?
No, I would love for you to do
We
it.
need that answer though about tearing up roads. That's,
We've gone down the road of engineering this
Yeah.
before, and every single time we do it, they don't like how it comes back as far as costs. So it's, how many times do you want to have the discussion? They approached the county. They did not approach us. Before, we were always dealing with them. So they approached Mr. Schaefer.
It's me.
Now,
We can have a deeper discussion tomorrow. This is just touching on it, and that's pretty much.
we have a consensus then to have Hans go back and put together a mutual aid agreement with Austin.
We already have two tasks. If I may say so, you as a board have the task to please consider what to do with these mapping anomalies.
yes.
That's not changing who sends the bill. But I would like to be able to say that you buy into the concept, whoever has infrastructure readily available should be taking the flow. It has nothing to do with how the bills come.
Whoever's taking the flow doesn't necessarily have to be the one that builds it.
Exactly. And the agreement says exactly that. The person in Oyster Cove doesn't know their wastewater flows to a Sussex County facility.
Well, it makes all kinds of sense in the world. That's no question.
Oh, that's been a great discussion. I've loved every minute of it. We went a lot deeper than I thought we were. It's good.
Because the aid really has layers.
Yeah.
Like when we discussed it, we felt clearly that somebody could just say, oh, it's just, you have a piece of equipment in the yard, I can send a CDL driver over to get. You don't have to ask for an agreement, just he calls me and says, yeah, here are the keys.
Right.
So what do I understand?
Mutual aid is important. It's a very
matter.
thing to do.
Let's have them evaluate.
Okay.
I'll give you two of my off the top numbers, so we'll give you some better numbers. And
Okay. Just look at odd numbers. Odd numbers are more believable than even numbers. Sure.
Finance person, by the way.
Anything else for us?
No.
Anything else? Austin, do you have anything that?
No, that's pretty much it.
Okay. Is that all?
Yeah, just a couple things.
No, but by the way, we do have something in the agreement which we didn't touch on, which is interesting to us. We are committed to, the agreement says, we participate on a full proportional basis with any upgrades of the facility which are reliability related.
Okay.
So again, we are interested as much as you are in 100% uptime.
All right, we have nothing else?
Yeah, thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Thank you very much for being here. It's very helpful.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, whatever. Aye.
Thank you.